2019 was dedicated to this exercise from January to December. And all of my activities to abolish this culminated in a massive abolition exercise that took place at Agukwu in Anambra State, a place we believe as Igbos that we came from, all right? So it was a very strategic location. We went there, we did it. It was like a spiritual abolition and all kinds of, a lot of symbolism that were involved in it. And right after that abolition exercise, to the glory of God, I would say, a lot of communities in Igbo land, I am talking close to 70 communities in Igbo land that never wanted to hear anything about abolishing Otu caste system, suddenly embraced the idea and began to carry out abolition exercises in pockets in different locations, from Imo to Anambra to Abia to Enugu to Ebonyi. We started hearing stories of abolition exercises happening in places no one ever thought they would ever happen. And I believe that it was due to the exercise that we carried out. I believe that the prayers we prayed on that ground that day has also begun to bear fruit. Okay, so on the question as of whether I believe it can truly be fully abolished, yes is the answer to that. I think it can be fully abolished, okay? It might not be, let me not say 110%, okay? But when we say fully here means a greater percentage of the practice can easily be eradicated if we do not just the physical abolition that everybody sees, that we need to also do sensitization. We need to carry out some type of positive propaganda against the practice, okay? Because it's a psychological thing. If you do not psychologically reorient the people, the physical exercises alone can only do so much. So that's why I went further. After that exercise, I went further to do a movie that basically origins of Osu practice, because 99.9% of the people who practice Osu in Igbo land today do not know exactly where it came from. They just know that they were told. It's like a weird, warped history that was handed to us, and we just practice it. And we are practicing this thing without a full knowledge of where it came from and all of that. So the movie that I have done is a product of 10 years of research. We just squeezed it into a movie. And the first thing that happens to you when you watch this movie is that you get an idea of, oh my goodness, this is where it came from. And if this is where it came from, why on earth are we then practicing it? So for me, things like this movie and so many other media content that are going to follow it afterwards are things we're going to use to carry out that psychological reorientation that will basically lay this thing finally to rest. Because the moment the minds are educated on what is happening, the practice itself begins to falter. And that's what I believe about this.
I need you to dwell more on the psychological aspect of this, because you said this is like handing over to generations a particular belief. Why is this so? How was it like? Did you experience it? Do you have a friend that experienced it? How come?
So I love the last line of your question. Did you experience this? Do you have anybody who has experienced this? The answer is yes. Okay, so before I jumped into this, something happened. I was telling that story a few days ago during an interview. I met a young man. You know, I grew up knowing about Osu. You know, when we were growing up, they used to tell us, those people, they call them NTA, those people. And I was wondering, who are those people? Are they not our brothers and sisters we grew up with? They keep telling us, no, you can't do that with them. No, you can't go here, you can't go there. You know, so we grew up with that level of confusion. And then when you tell the elders to explain to you further, they usually don't want to, they are always very economical with the truth about the whole thing, because maybe they didn't know. But there's something that spurred me into action, that got me to move into this activism. It was a young man, I think his name is Obinna. This guy had dated his girl for God knows how long, many years. And they finally got to the point where they decided they were going to get married. And you know how Igbos can be very extravagant in terms of the way we do our marriage, always very elaborate. So you have to do introduction, you have to do traditional marriage, and you have to do white wedding, and you know, and all kinds of stuff, you know, all of that together. So this guy had gone to do his introduction. Introduction is supposed to be a very low-key stuff where you just do just a few people invited, and then the
Of course,
parents
yeah.
of both families and all of that. But this guy made his introduction look like it was a traditional marriage. It was so massive because he was so happy to get married to the love of his life. And then after that introduction, guess what happened? The father of the bride to be suddenly came to the realization that they had not made any inquiries about the young man. See, all the while they were dating, nothing happened. He engaged the girl, nothing happened. They forgot. And then introduction happened. It was so elaborate and beautiful. And now they say, we haven't asked questions about this guy. Let's go and investigate. And then they went to investigate, called their people. They lived in Abuja. So they called the people back home, his umunas, his kinsmen. Say, please go and do investigation for me about this guy. And they went to do the investigation. And they traced his bloodline to the bloodline of the so-called Osu, which they also call outcasts. Okay? Now, when that result came, the man called his daughter and said, let me tell you now, that relationship is null and void. Both of them thought it was a joke, but guess what? It was for real. It got to a point where the man even picked a gun and wanted to kill his daughter for trying to mention that guy in his house. And at the end of the day, why did I get involved? I heard the story of how this young man, when the reality dawned on him, he went into his room and locked himself up and went on a hunger strike. That hunger strike lasted for 2 weeks, no food, no water. They had to break the door to his home to be able to save the guy. He was looking like a bone. This was what got me infuriated. When I heard the story, I said, I want to see him. They got the guy. I finally met with the guy. The guy was a shadow of himself. The guy he couldn't even pay. This was a guy who was doing so well in his business. He just couldn't bear the loss of the love of life because of a tradition, a culture that we have even no full understanding of. So I said to myself, okay, so if this is what is going on, why are we all acting like this thing doesn't happen? Because when you talk to my people, Igbo people, they're always like, oh, that was back then. It doesn't happen anymore. I can tell you that is taking place today that does not involve investigation. The moment you say you want to marry an Igbo man or an Igbo woman, whether it is inter-tribal marriage or the same Igbo people marrying themselves, there must be an investigation. And this is the reason why they do investigation. And I have seen people commit suicide. I have heard of suicide cases. In fact, there was one that almost happened the day we did the abolition exercise at Agukunri in 2018. I had to beg the girl on the phone. I said, please come and meet me. I flew her into the east and I sat her down and spoke to her. If you look at, there's a blogger on Instagram recently that posted another one again of a girl who was crying and rolling herself on the floor, almost like she wants to kill herself. Why? Because the family of her so-called fiancé had just found out that she came from the bloodline of the Usu people. And the marriage was terminated. She was supposed to get married in January of this year. We are now in February. That girl was crying. If you see the pain, the guy called Tunde Edna, if you see the pain, if in the tone of this girl when she was crying, you would know that this person, if care is not taken, could actually commit suicide.
If we are to relate to Chinwe Achebe's work, which is no longer at ease, that book dealt with this particular issue. Now, as a concerned artist, let's go back to your work, which you were talking about earlier. How have you been able to tell the story beyond love, conscience, and purpose?
Okay, so I have been able to tell the story by pointing my people to the realities on ground. All right? I have an impressive, fairly impressive following on social media. And I always tell people that I strongly believe that the reason why a lot of people follow me on social media is just because of the fact that I always tell you something and show you the proof of it. I don't like sentimentalism. I don't like being unnecessarily emotional about stuff. I like to be forthright and be straight with you. If I tell you this is black, I'll show you the color black. If I tell you it's white, I will show you white. I don't just want you to imagine it. This is what I do with my people. I show them evidence. When I told them that people were committing suicide, some of them thought I was joking. I had to bring a girl on the day of the event who was on the verge of taking her own life. And she came and she spoke. When I told them the practice was still going on, at the event, we brought a guy who said that even in Abia State, that is not such an epicenter of this practice. Imo State is the epicenter, and then Anambra. But even in Abia State, a guy, someone who is so-called part of the freeborn, Wadiala or Diala, what they call them, or Amadi, someone who belongs to that, went and shook hands with the person who belongs to the Osukas, and they find the other person, and you have to be mildly ostracized for a while. Okay, if you have deeper relationship with them, they will ostracize you completely, and you become Osu by association. This, I'm not talking 1950 something or 1970. No, this was just 2017, 18. That was when this thing was happening. Up until this day, it is still happening. So my message to my people is, here is this cankerworm that we have in our midst, this cancer that is eating deep into the fabrics of our cultural bonding that we need to deal with right now, or else we are going to be dismembered from the inside. Implosiveness is the worst thing that can happen to any culture or society. If we implode, nobody can help us. If the explosion is coming from outside, we might band together to defend it. But if we allow ourselves to be disconnected in this manner and to be completely imploded, we cannot be able to get help from anywhere. That's why I tell them, here is the evidence, here is the proof, here it is, we need to do something about it. And then secondly, I'm going back to the movie that I made again. I decided to make that movie because I felt that there are so many things you will not be able to say just going on radio, except that you put them inside a movie when people will sit down and digest in the comfort of their homes and understand the impact, the psychological impact, and understand that this thing actually should not be practiced. Let me read you something very briefly. Now, in 1956, on March 20, 1956, Igbo legislators in the Eastern Region House of Assembly in Enugu abrogated the practice, declaring it unlawful and a crime punishable by law. Now, in his address to the defunct Eastern Region House of Assembly on March 20, 1956, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe described the Osuka system as devilish and uncharitable, saying it was wrong to brand any human being with a label of inferiority due to accident of history. Okay, my question is, what does he mean by accident of history? When Nnamdi Azikiwe said due to an accident of history, what does he mean? That's the big elephant in the room, and that's what this movie called Osu is going to address. We went into those days of Osu practice and excavated everything that was hidden, exposed the true origins of Osu to the point that even a newborn baby will understand where it came from. And that movie then answers the question of why did Nnamdi Azikiwe say that Osu, labeling people as Osukas is due to an accident of history is very bad. So that accident of history was explained in this movie because what we believe as Osu is not what Osu really is. The people we call Osu today are actually not Osu. They are our own kind. It is a devilish propaganda that has labeled them as such. And that's what this movie is going to explain in black and white.
In black and white. Okay, now, prior to this interview, we had a very hot discussion on this issue because people are being affected, and this is a practice that is expected to be abolished, which is not, in quote. But really, the issue of sensitization and education came up. Let's bring this to a bigger table, a national discourse. How do we draw lessons from the negative aspect of this practice or belief so that we can have a better nation, a better society, so that we can also grow love amongst ourselves? Tolerance, in quotes.
Okay, so I've lived in America for a bunch of years, yeah? I lived in America a lot. And when you come to America or Europe or anywhere, Africans no longer understand, they no longer see those tribal lines again, which something suddenly bonds us together because we all face racism at the same time. When racism comes, it doesn't say, are you Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, are you Efik, are you from Ghana? They lump all of us into
as one,
and we go through it at once. Now, bring it down home today and see how it feels that people who share the same destiny with you, people who share the same culture and tradition with you, you grew up knowing them as a baby. This is coming down home. It is so repugnant. It is so distasteful. It is so horrible. I mean, when I think about it, I don't know how to wrap my head around that. People today, let me tell you the truth. If you look at, I went to meet one man during the abolition program. The guy told me, he said, Joe, I want to take you to my house. I came to his house. He brought his album and showed me the picture he took with his wife and his 5 daughters. His wife and he's a medical doctor. And the guy said to me, Joe, look at all my beautiful daughters. I said, yeah, wonderful. They look so beautiful. And he said to me, do you know that none of them married an Igbo man? I said, what? He said, none of them. And all of them had their first date. Their second dates were Igbos. But none of them ended up with an Igbo person. Because the moment they date an Igbo person, they will get to the point where
the question pops up.
They find out, boom, they cut it off. So 5 daughters, all married to either Edo or Yoruba or someone. Now, you are chasing your own out. Do you think that when they marry those people, that they will ever want to have anything to do with Igbo land again? So if we are also clamoring to have a place at the center or in the leadership of Nigeria, if this one is not resolved, it's going to be extremely difficult, because you are going to have some of those people that we have ostracized from our midst, people we are discriminating against. Most of them are already in power today, because for some strange, mysterious reason, these people we call also are actually some of the richest people we have in Igbo land today, incidentally. So I'm saying to my people, if you want to have a place in the sun, you've got to learn how to put up with blisters. And in this case, we're not even putting up with blisters. We are only trying to be sensible enough to bring our own together. I see what the Yorubas do. There are people who bear Yoruba names in Kogi State today. And Yoruba people are always looking for where they find anybody that even behaves like he's Yoruba. Even if you don't have the Yoruba name, they will grab you and bring you together, because there is so much power and strength in unity and numbers. Why are we scattering our own? What we should be doing now is to bring more numbers together. We are too many as a people. In South today, there are so many people who are Igbos who say, oh, we are not Igbos. It is because this division has not been dealt with. There are Ikwere people, there are Igbo-speaking people in Delta. How can we bring them together if on our own we are still discriminating against the people we call Osu? So for us to be able to foster unity, both internally and on a national level, we need to eliminate all manner of segregation, all manner of discrimination on every level, by every stretch. Every single appearance of it has to be eliminated, whether it is internally or externally. It does not bode well for anybody. That's why I am on this journey, to make sure that we see the end of this in my lifetime.
Mr. Josph Okechukwu, I want to thank you so much for your time on Insight this week, and hopefully we will have a part 2 of this conversation, because it is a national conversation, not just for a particular segment. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll have you talk more on this another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.